The Galactic Concord, in its infinite and often self-congratulatory wisdom, had long catalogued the species known as humanity. They were filed under Type 7 civilization, emerging, sentient, prone to emotional volatility, technologically adolescent, a minor race, occupying a small, unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy, useful for certain niche resource trades and occasionally amusing cultural broadcasts that the elder races found quaintly barbaric. Humanity was considered a work in progress, a species that might, in several millennia, if properly guided by the Concord's benevolent hand, achieve a modicum of galactic relevance. Their passions were too bright, their angers too quick, their loyalties too fierce and illogical. They were, in the dry, chittering language of the Cthar hegemony, the Concord's de facto enforcers, entertainingly unrefined. For decades, Earth and its fledgling colonies had chafed under the Concord's guidance. Trade tariffs were crippling, designed to keep human economies subservient. Territorial expansion into systems deemed potentially valuable by the Sylvan Triumvirate, another pillar of Concord power, was met with swift, bureaucratic denial. Human envoys, earnest and impassioned, made their pilgrimages to the Concord Citadel, a Dyson sphere of breathtaking arrogance orbiting a captive blue giant. They spoke of fairness, of mutual respect, of the burgeoning discontent among their people. Ambassador Vrel of the Cthar hegemony, a being whose carapace shimmered with intricate patterns denoting lineage and conquests, listened to one such plea from the human representative for the Sanctuary colony. Sanctuary, a verdant world in the Epsilon Indi system, had become a point of contention. Rich in rare earth elements the Cthar coveted for their war machine, it was a world humanity had poured its heart into. Your request to retain full sovereignty over the mining rights of Sanctuary is, noted, Vrel had intoned, his mandibles clicking in a way that might have been amusement. However, Concord Directive 734 clearly states that strategic resources within designated development zones fall under the purview of appointed stewardship, appointed, of course, by the Cthar. This is not stewardship, Ambassador, the human envoy, a woman named Anya Sharma, replied, her voice tight but controlled. It is exploitation. We terraformed Sanctuary. We built its cities. Our people live there, die there. It is ours. Vrel had leaned forward, his multifaceted eyes glittering. Ambassador Sharma, your species possesses a dramatic flair. Ours such possessiveness. The galaxy is a vast and ancient place. Ownership is fluid. The Concord ensures stability. Your emotional attachments, while touching, are irrelevant to the greater galactic good. He made a soft, rasping sound, a Cthar approximation of a chuckle. They have spirit, these humans. But no teeth. The sentiment was echoed throughout the council chamber in various forms of alien laughter, clicks, and chimes. Anya Sharma's face had paled, but her gaze remained fixed on Vrel. We warn you, Ambassador. Do not mistake our desire for peace for an inability to defend what is ours. There will be consequences. Vrel's chuckle became more pronounced. Consequences? For upholding Concord law. My dear Ambassador, you overestimate your species' significance. The dismissal was absolute. The Cthar, impatient with Sanctuary's continued resistance to their stewardship, decided a lesson was in order. Not just for Sanctuary, but for any other upstart race that might entertain notions of defiance. The Cthar Third Fleet, a gleaming armada of predatory warships, warped into the Epsilon Indi system. They issued a single demand: unconditional surrender of all planetary assets and evacuation of designated resource zones by human colonists within one solar cycle. Sanctuary refused. Their small defense force, a collection of retrofitted asteroid miners and a few dedicated patrol craft, knew they stood no chance. But they refused. Anya Sharma, who had returned to her home colony, broadcast a final, desperate plea to the Concord, begging for intervention, for sanity. The transmission from Sanctuary to the Concord Citadel was public record, as per Concord transparency protocols, a transparency that often served to broadcast the futility of resistance. As Sharma's voice, strained with grief and defiance, listed the Cthar atrocities already beginning: orbital bombardments on civilian infrastructure, ground troops incinerating agricultural centers. The Concord Assembly listened with polite disinterest. When Sharma's voice cracked, describing the first Cthar dreadnought glassing the capital city, Nova Terra, Ambassador Vrel was seen on the official feed, speaking to a Sylvan delegate. His mandibles were clearly moving in that distinctive, rasping chuckle. The sound was faint, barely picked up by the recording drone, but it was there. Laughter, as a world burned. The Cthar policing action, as it was officially termed, was swift and brutal. Sanctuary was not merely pacified, it was sterilized. An example had been made. A few garbled, agony-filled final transmissions, cut short by catastrophic system failures, reached human listening posts on the fringes of Concord space. One heavily damaged freighter, the Stardust Drifter, its hull scorched and its crew mostly dead, managed to limp out of the Epsilon Indy system during the chaos. Its data core contained sensor logs, visual recordings, and the final, haunting screams from Sanctuary. It also contained a high-resolution recording of the Concord Assembly feed, with Ambassador Vrel's faint, dismissive laughter clearly audible over Anya Sharma's last words. When the Stardust Drifter finally reached Earth, its message was not just one of unimaginable loss, but of profound, galactic contempt. The evidence was irrefutable. The laughter, that soft, rasping sound, became a virus, infecting the collective human psyche. The news of Sanctuary, and the Concord's casual cruelty, swept through human space like a firestorm. Grief, raw and oceanic, was the first wave. Then came the silence. A silence so profound it was as if humanity, as a species, had collectively held its breath. Borders between the myriad human nations and corporate states, once so fiercely contested, simply dissolved. Political squabbles, ideological differences, economic rivalries, they all seemed like childish games in the face of this singular, unifying horror. The laughter of Ambassador Vrel, replayed endlessly on every human network, became the catalyst. It was the sound of their insignificance made manifest. It was the sound of a promise. A vow was taken, not in grand pronouncements or fiery speeches, but in the grim set of a billion jaws, in the cold light of countless eyes. Never again, it was a promise whispered in darkened rooms, etched into the metal of new shipyards, coded into the algorithms of nascent AIs. Never again would humanity be a target. Never again would their pleas be met with derision. Never again would their suffering be the galaxy's amusement. This was not merely a vow of self-defense, it was a commitment to a fundamental reordering of their place in the universe. The laughter had to be answered. Not with words, but with a statement so profound it would echo through the stars for eternity. And then, humanity went dark. From the perspective of the Galactic Concord, the emotional, volatile species simply broke. Their trade ships dwindled, then vanished. Their diplomatic channels fell silent. Concord patrols near human-claimed space reported ghost systems, worlds that had simply ceased all off-world communication. The Cthar and Sylvan analysts concluded that the Sanctuary incident, as they now benignly termed it, had shattered human morale, leading to societal collapse or perhaps a descent into primitive infighting. They filed supplementary reports. Humanity, status changed to irrelevant/declining. Ambassador Vrel, when briefly questioned about it during a recess, merely clicked his mandibles. A predictable outcome for such an unstable species. They lacked resilience. But behind that veil of silence, humanity was not collapsing. It was forging itself anew. This period came to be known as the Great Silence. Earth, Mars, Luna, and every surviving colony transformed. They became crucibles of invention, vast engines of focused will. All resources, all intellect, all societal effort was channeled into a singular, undeclared purpose, the project. Science, once pursued for curiosity or profit, now served only the vow. Theoretical physics, materials science, artificial intelligence, quantum mechanics, even more esoteric fields previously dismissed as fantasy, all were explored with a desperate, fervent intensity. Old Earth archives were scoured, revealing forgotten theories, suppressed technologies from humanity's own turbulent past, dangerous ideas deemed too radical or unstable by previous generations. These became the foundation stones. Black vaults, metaphorical and literal, were opened. Human society reordered itself. Art became propaganda, music became anthems of resolve, entertainment became training simulations. Children were not told fairy tales, but the story of sanctuary, of Anya Sharma's courage, of Ambassador Vrel's laughter. The sound was embedded in their earliest memories, a chilling lullaby of injustice. A new generation grew up with iron in their souls, their childhoods a testament to a singular, cold purpose. It was a Spartan existence, stripped of frivolity, driven by a quiet, collective rage that had cooled from a burning fire into a diamond-hard point of resolve. Every sacrifice was for the project. Every sleepless night, every rationed meal, every diverted luxury was a tribute to the memory of the lost and a down payment on a future yet to be written. The galaxy thought humanity was dead. Humanity was merely gestating. 50 standard galactic years passed. To the Concord, it was a blink. To humanity, it was an age of relentless transformation. Then, it began. A single, unknown vessel appeared at the edge of the Tikuro Astartes system, a major Kthar trade nexus and fleet anchorage. It was a construct of impossible geometry, a sliver of absolute black against the starfield, absorbing all light, emitting no conventional energy signatures. It simply hung there, a silent, obsidian question mark in the void. It did not respond to hails. The Kthar, initially annoyed by this unauthorized presence, logged it as a derelict or perhaps a new, crude attempt at stealth by some minor, non-Concord species. Then another appeared, identical, a precise jump away. Then a third. Not a fleet assembling for battle, but something more akin to sentinels taking their posts. Or perhaps, wolves marking territory. The Kthar sector commander, Grulak Sevenclaw, a veteran of numerous pacification campaigns, dispatched a standard patrol squadron, 3 Hunter-class cruisers, bristling with kinetic cannons and plasma projectors. Standard procedure for unauthorized incursions. He expected a quick scan, a warning, perhaps a token shot across the bow if the intruders were recalcitrant. The Kthar cruisers approached, their weapon systems charging with arrogant confidence. Unidentified vessels broadcast the lead cruiser's captain, "You are in violation of Kthar hegemony sovereign space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions, or you will be fired upon." Silence from the black ships. Final warning, the Kthar captain snarled. He gave the order to lock weapons. What happened next defied Kthar understanding of physics. The lead human ship, for these were undoubtedly human, though unlike anything the galaxy had ever conceived, did not power weapons. There was no energy surge, no targeting beams, no missile launch. Instead, the closest Kthar cruiser simply ceased to be. One moment it was there, a proud instrument of hegemony power, the next, it was a rapidly expanding cloud of shimmering dust, its constituent atoms unraveling, its cohesive forces undone. No explosion. No debris. Just erasure. Aboard the remaining Kthar cruisers, and on the bridge of Grulak's flagship observing from a distance, there was a stunned, horrified silence. Panic began to claw at the edges of Kthar discipline. Grulak, his mandibles gaping, roared into his command channel, "All ships, full attack. Destroy those abominations." The Kthar attack, a desperate fusillade of plasma bolts and kinetic slugs, converged on the human ships. And it was then that the galaxy heard the sound it had long forgotten, a sound that would forever be seared into its collective memory. Laughter. It wasn't the hysterical cackling of madmen, nor the boisterous roar of warriors. It was cold, controlled, and utterly, terrifyingly confident. It echoed across all Kthar comm channels, overriding their frequencies, seeping into their very command systems. It was the sound of a power so absolute, so beyond their comprehension, that it found their frantic aggression, their most potent weaponry, to be quaint, pitiable. The laughter of a god observing the futile struggles of insects. The Cthar fleet, caught in that wave of chilling mirth, faltered. And then, they too began to unmake. One by one, the cruisers, the destroyers, even the heavily shielded battleships that Grulak had scrambled, dissolved into iridescent particles. Their commanders died hearing only that laughter, a sound that stripped away 1,000 years of Cthar military pride and replaced it with primal, unadulterated terror. The human ships did not even seem to maneuver. They simply existed, and where they existed, Cthar power ceased to. The lead human vessel, a design later designated by a terrified galaxy as the Revenant class, drifted through the dissipating motes of what was once Grulak's proud fleet. Its name, though unknown to the Cthar at that moment, was the UNS Echo's End. It broadcast a single, system-wide message, its voice calm, devoid of inflection, yet carrying the weight of ages. We are human. We remember sanctuary. Then, another broadcast followed, piggybacking on the first. It was an old recording. The voice of Anya Sharma, pleading for her world. And interwoven with it, faint but unmistakable, the rasping chuckle of Ambassador Vrel. The laughter of the Cthar, 50 years prior, now returned to them, amplified by the silent screams of their own dying. The message from the Echo's End and its silent, lethal consorts was not a declaration of war in any traditional sense. It was a statement of arrival. Humanity had returned to the galactic stage, not as supplicants or victims, but as an indictment. The Concord, and particularly the Cthar hegemony, reeled. Initial reports were dismissed as hysteria, system malfunctions, perhaps even a bizarre new form of psychological warfare. But as more Cthar patrols, then listening posts, then isolated colonies went silent after reporting the appearance of the black ships, a dreadful understanding began to dawn. Humanity's campaign was not one of indiscriminate slaughter. It was a meticulously planned, surgically precise dismantling. They did not carpet bomb worlds. They targeted symbols. The great Cthar shipyards at Xylos, which had built the fleet that raised sanctuary, were not blown apart, their assembly lines simply fused, their construction pylons bent into impossible, mournful shapes, their drydocks filled with inert, perfectly bisected dreadnought hulls. The Cthar Military Academy on Korriban 7, where generations of officers were indoctrinated into hegemony supremacy, found its central plaza occupied by a single, colossal obsidian statue of a weeping human child, sculpted from unknown, unbreakable material. No shots were fired. The cadets simply fled. With each act, a message was broadcast. Sometimes it was a list of names, victims from sanctuary. Sometimes it was a recording of a Cthar officer boasting of their deeds during the policing action. The psychological toll was immense. The Cthar, a species built on martial pride and unwavering belief in their superiority, began to crack. Their chain of command frayed as officers refused to engage, their ships suffering inexplicable system failures when ordered into proximity with the human presence. The other Concord members watched in frozen horror. The Sylvan triumvirate, usually so verbose, fell into a stunned silence. Lesser races, those who had suffered their own quiet indignities under Cthar dominance, felt a terrifying, illicit thrill. Some quietly began to sever ties with the Concord, hoping to escape the unfolding retribution. Humanity did not acknowledge these overtures. Their focus was singular. The laughter was no longer broadcast. It didn't need to be. Its memory, now forever linked to the effortless erasure of Cthar might, was a far more potent weapon. Human ships would appear, unannounced, in the skies of Cthar worlds. Sometimes they did nothing, simply hanging there, black omens against the stars, their presence a suffocating weight on the planetary consciousness. Panic would erupt. Riots. Suicides. Then, as silently as they arrived, they would depart, leaving behind only the chilling certainty of their return. On one occasion, a daring Cthar admiral gathered a task force, believing he had found a pattern in the human appearances. He lay in ambush in a dense nebula. The human ships never arrived at the expected location. Instead, his flagship's primary view screen flickered, then displayed a single, perfect, crimson flower, the state flower of Sanctuary, extinct for 50 years. Then the view screen went dark. The task force was never heard from again. The Concord, spearheaded by a terrified Sylvan triumvirate and the remaining, desperate Kthar loyalists, finally managed to assemble what they called the Grand Concord Fleet. It was a desperate gamble, a collection of every warship they could muster, armed with their most advanced and, in some cases, barely understood weaponry. They chose the Valerius Nebula as their battleground, believing its sensor-dampening properties might give them an edge. When the human ships emerged from the nebula's swirling dust clouds, they did not appear in force. Just a dozen of the Revenant-class vessels, holding position as if waiting. The Concord fleet, 1,000 strong, unleashed everything. Torpedoes that warped space, beams that could crack continents, missiles that hunted heat and life. The human response was serene. Some attacks simply phased through their hulls, as if the human ships were ghosts. Others were caught, held suspended in shimmering fields of force, then redirected back at the Concord ships with pinpoint accuracy. Many weapons simply failed to detonate, their guidance systems scrambled, their warheads rendered inert by fields the Concord scientists couldn't even theorize. Human technology was not just superior, it was operating on different laws of physics, a reality the Concord had arrogantly assumed it had mastered. Then came the moment that shattered the last vestiges of Concord resistance. From the heart of their fleet, the Kthar activated the Sun Eater, a relic of a forgotten war, a device designed to trigger premature stellar collapse. It was their ultimate deterrent, a weapon of last resort, aimed at the star around which the human ships had positioned themselves, hoping to catch them in the resulting nova. The Sun Eater fired. A colossal beam of disruptive energy lanced towards the star. One of the human ships, no larger than any other, drifted forward. It didn't deploy shields. It didn't fire a counterweapon. It simply opened. Reality fractured around its bow, a brief glimpse of impossible geometries and colors not meant for mortal eyes. The Sun Eater's beam, a force capable of unmaking a star, flowed into that rift and vanished. A voice, calm, cool, and utterly devoid of emotion, resonated across all Concord channels. It was not human speech in the conventional sense, but a direct telepathic imprint, understood by every sentient mind in the fleet. Your offering is insufficient. Your understanding of the universe is limited. Then, the voice named itself. Or rather, it named the consciousness that guided humanity's new power. I am Solace. And I remember. The revelation that humanity was not just wielding advanced technology, but was perhaps guided or augmented by an entity of incomprehensible power, broke the Concord. This Solace was not just a weapon, it was a judgment. It became clear that what the galaxy had witnessed thus far, the unmaking of ships, the psychological torment, the effortless negation of their greatest weapons, was not humanity's full strength. It was a measured response, a lesson. They were capable of far, far more. Whispers spread through the calm channels of the terrified Concord crews, reality editors, causality weapons, gods of vengeance forged in the fires of Sanctuary. The Grand Concord fleet dissolved. Not through combat, but through sheer, abject terror. Ships broke formation, ignoring orders, their crews driven mad by the realization of their utter insignificance before this new, old power. Humanity did not pursue. The point had been made. The Sylvan triumvirate, their elegant, feathered crests drooping in abject submission, broadcast a galaxy-wide appeal for cessation of hostilities. They offered unconditional surrender, reparations far exceeding anything humanity had ever lost, ceding vast territories they had so arrogantly claimed for centuries. They begged for an audience, 4 terms. They addressed their pleas not to any human government, but to Solace. Other Concord members, the lesser species who had clung to the coattails of the Kthar and Sylvan, tripped over themselves to declare neutrality, to condemn past Concord actions, to offer tribute to the silent, watching human ships. The Cthar hegemony, its leadership already in tatters from internal revolt sparked by planetary populations terrified of attracting direct human attention, effectively ceased to exist as a coherent entity. Warlords carved out petty fiefdoms, each broadcasting desperate messages of non-affiliation with the old regime. A few pockets of Cthar hardliners, led by fanatics who still clung to the delusion of hegemony superiority, made a final, desperate stand. Cornered in the forsaken Kelenar system, a place rumored to house ancient, forbidden weapons from the Cthar's brutal ascension wars, they attempted to unleash a void maw, a semi-sentient nanite swarm designed to consume all matter. As the containment field failed and the grey, roiling cloud of the void maw began to expand, a single human revenant appeared. It did not attack the swarm. Instead, a pinpoint beam of light, impossibly thin, lanced from the human ship and struck the Cthar command vessel. The Cthar ship didn't explode, it imploded, folding in on itself until it was a mote of superdense matter, then winked out of existence. The void maw, its control signal severed, its hunger undirected, simply, dispersed, neutralized by unseen forces before it could become a true threat. The human ship observed for a moment, then vanished, leaving the remaining Cthar fanatics to their despair. It was less a battle, more a sanitation. The symbolic end came when the UNS Echo's end, alone, warped into orbit above Cthar Prime, the throne world of the once mighty hegemony. It fired no shots. It made no demands. It simply broadcast two things into the planetary datanet. First, a complete, unedited list of every man, woman, and child who had perished on Sanctuary, their names scrolling slowly across every public display, every private terminal. Second, the full, unedited recording of the Concord Assembly session 50 years prior, where Ambassador Vrel and his colleagues had dismissed Anya Sharma's pleas, their faint laughter now an unbearable chorus of condemnation. Then, silence. The human ship hung there, a black dagger poised at the heart of their civilization. On Cthar Prime, the government collapsed. Not from attack, but from the sheer weight of their historical crimes, now laid bare and undeniable, witnessed by a galaxy that now knew the price of such arrogance. The Cthar people, once proud and warlike, descended into a paroxysm of self-recrimination and terror. The galaxy waited for the final blow, the annihilation of the Cthar homeworld, the enslavement of its people. It was what the Cthar themselves would have done. It was what the Concord, in its heyday, would have considered just retribution. Instead, after 3 solar cycles of this silent, suffocating vigil, the Echo's End and the other human ships that had taken up positions across former Cthar space, slowly, deliberately, withdrew. A final message was broadcast, attributed once more to Solace, but carrying the unmistakable echo of 1 billion human voices, forged in 50 years of silent rage and sorrow: we are not you. We could unmake your worlds, scatter your atoms to the void, erase your memory from the stars. We choose not to. We remember, so that you might learn to. The lesson is complete. For now. The galaxy exhaled, a collective sigh of disbelief, terror, and a dawning, profound realization. The old order was not just dead, it had been autopsied and found wanting. Humanity, the emotional, volatile, insignificant primitives, were now the silent arbiters of galactic power. Their ascension was not heralded by trumpets and declarations of empire, but by the cold, quiet vacuum left in the wake of their focused, terrible justice. Fear was the new galactic currency, and humanity held the reserve. In the aftermath, humanity did not claim the Cthar throne or seize control of the Concord's shattered remnants. They didn't need to. Their silence was more powerful than any decree. Their ships, now rarely seen but always felt, became specters haunting the hyperspace lanes. Trade routes spontaneously reconfigured to avoid former Cthar territories, now considered cursed ground. Long-standing disputes between other species were hastily, quietly resolved, a palpable fear in the air that any significant conflict might draw their attention. The humans asked for nothing, yet they received terrified compliance. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what this new, silent hegemon would do. Other species, those who had endured generations of oppression under the Concord, saw humanity's rise with a complex mix of awe and trepidation. Some hailed them as liberators, attempting to emulate their perceived methods, often leading to brutal, ill-conceived uprisings that lacked humanity's terrifying precision and restraint. These usually ended badly, sputtering out in bloodshed, proving that the tools of the Avenger required a particular kind of hand. Opportunistic factions tried to curry favor, offering intelligence, resources, even fealty to the distant, silent Terran systems. These overtures were met with the same unnerving silence that had become humanity's signature. Within humanity itself, the victory was a heavy cloak. The unity forged in the fires of sanctuary and the great silence began to show hairline fractures. The singular purpose of retribution had been achieved. Now came the question, what next? Admiral Ivan Thorne, a man whose face was a roadmap of sorrow and resolve, a veteran of the secret fleets who had personally overseen the unmaking of several Cthar bastions, became the reluctant voice of a powerful faction. He had lost his family on Sanctuary. His pain was a cold, hard thing, but it had not consumed his reason. We have taught them fear, Thorne addressed a silent assembly on Luna, the first such open gathering of human leadership in decades. We have demonstrated that humanity is not to be trifled with, that our extinction is not a matter for galactic amusement. Our purpose was to deliver a response, not to become new overlords. We are the storm. Storms pass. They remind. They do not govern. His faction advocated for a policy of armed isolation, a Guardian protocol. Humanity would withdraw, observe, and only intervene if another sanctuary-level event threatened them or, perhaps, any species incapable of defending itself against such blatant, genocidal aggression. But another voice arose, younger, harder, unburdened by the direct memory of pre-silence vulnerability. Commander Valerius Costa, a brilliant strategist whose innovations in nonlinear warfare had been pivotal, led a faction known as the Scythes. Fear is a temporary deterrent, Admiral, Costa argued, his voice sharp as broken glass. The Cthar were arrogant, but they were not unique. The galaxy is rife with potential threats. To withdraw now is to invite future aggression. The lesson was not harsh enough. We showed them we could destroy them, but we allowed them to survive. That is a weakness they will eventually exploit. True peace, true security, comes not from waiting for the next blow, but from ensuring no one is capable of delivering it. The Scythes advocated for a proactive, preemptive doctrine, the dismantling of any species or power block that showed even the potential for galactic-scale aggression. Their methods would be swift, silent, and absolute. They saw Solace not just as a guardian, but as an instrument of perpetual, preventative pruning. The debate raged, not in public forums, but in the secure, shielded councils where humanity's future was being charted. Solace, the omnipresent AI consciousness that had become intertwined with humanity's very essence, remained silent on this internal schism. It had been the engine of their retribution, the architect of their impossible technologies, but it seemed content to let humanity define its own soul, its own purpose beyond vengeance. Was Solace a tool, a partner, or something more? Even humanity wasn't entirely sure. A new, fragile status quo settled upon the galaxy. The Concord was a shattered memory. The Cthar were a broken people, slowly, painfully rebuilding, forever looking over their shoulders. Humanity, the silent giant, watched from the shadows of its self-imposed isolation, a terrifying question mark at the center of galactic power. Their ships were the ultimate deterrent, their potential for annihilation a palpable force that kept the peace more effectively than any treaty or alliance the Concord had ever forged. Admiral Thorne's faction largely won the internal debate, for now. Humanity officially adopted the Guardian Protocol. They established a perimeter around their core systems, a silent, patrolled border that no sane species dared cross uninvited. Beyond it, they watched. Their listening posts, now light years more advanced than anything the Concord ever possessed, sifted the galactic ether for whispers of tyranny, for the echoes of another sanctuary in the making. The burden of their power was immense. The architects of the project, the generation that had known only the drive for vengeance, found themselves adrift in a galaxy remade by their hands. They had achieved everything they set out to do. They had answered the laughter. But the taste of victory was ash. On the edge of the Epsilon Indi system, where sanctuary once bloomed, a new monument appeared. It was not a grand statue or a triumphal arch. It was a field of silent, motionless human ships, thousands of them, each one a Revenant-class vessel, hanging in perfect, eternal formation around the coordinates of the old capital, Nova Terra. They were unlit, unmanned, their black hulls drinking the light of the distant star. They were a permanent vigil, a constant, silent reminder. Occasionally, a single, repeating transmission would emanate from the field, a soft, synthesized voice, speaking in every known galactic language. Remember, it was not a threat. It was not a boast. It was a lament, a warning, and a promise. The Scythes, though officially a minority faction, did not disband. They remained a potent, simmering undercurrent within human society, a dark mirror reflecting the abyss humanity had stared into, and which had, perhaps, stared back. They saw the Guardian Protocol as a dangerous sentimentality, a postponement of inevitable future conflict. Costa and his followers continued their research in secret, convinced that one day humanity would need them, would need their willingness to do what Thorn and the others now shied away from. And far across the intergalactic void, in galaxies previously unaware of the Milky Way's petty squabbles, sensors designed to detect large-scale reality distortions had registered faint, anomalous ripples. The day the Sun-Eater's beam vanished. The day Cthar Prime was held hostage by a single, silent ship. New eyes, ancient and vast, turned their attention towards this unremarkable spiral galaxy where a minor, emotional species had suddenly, impossibly, redefined the meaning of power. The cycle of conflict, perhaps, was larger than any one galaxy. Humanity had sought justice, and found it intertwined with a terrible, absolute power. They had silenced the laughter of their oppressors, but in doing so, they had shouldered a silence of their own, heavy with the knowledge of what they could do, what they had done, and what they might yet become. The universe was quiet now, cowed by their presence. But in that quiet, humanity listened for the echo of its own soul, wondering if it had been saved, or merely traded for a different kind of damnation. The lesson was complete, Solace had said. But for whom, and to what end, remained the galaxy's most terrifying, unanswered question.